Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Dawson County Board of Commissioners work session. Today is Thursday, September the 19th, 2024. Appreciate all those that are with us in attendance as well as those that are with us online. We'll start out with some unfinished business. First up, we have the presentation of amendment to residential agricultural zoning for wedding venues. County Manager Joey Leverett's going to talk about that. We talked about that at our last work session on September the 5th, and at that time, we were giving everybody an opportunity to look through it, see what they wanted to ask questions about. And so, County Manager, you're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is a continuation of our discussion from 2 weeks ago, and pinch hitting Ms. Farrell tonight. She's out of town. She brought this to you a couple of weeks ago. And just to recap and summarize the matter, there is consideration given to adding some additional standards for wedding venues, particularly related to overnight accommodations for weddings and events. Currently, that's not clear in our ordinance. Currently you cannot have overnight guests at a wedding venue unless you were to subdivide the property and have an Airbnb type situation. Of course, wedding venues, just required that they be in an RA zone. That also requires they're on a minimum of 15 acres in our code currently. So again, these are fairly large parcels that we're discussing. And these standards we discussed, additional standards we discussed a few weeks ago, they're in your packet. There's 14 of them. If you'd like for me to read all 14, I can. We did go through in detail a few weeks ago about them. I don't think any particular points of major discussion have come up since that time or additions. I have heard this past week, I did receive a phone call from one wedding venue business in our community stating they supported these changes. They would like to have overnight guests. I asked them to provide an email or a letter to that effect. They have not yet, but that may be forthcoming. They just haven't got it to me. So that's really the only new development I've heard from the community is there was one business that supported these changes that were being considered. Again, tonight we're just looking for some direction or further comments from the board. If you want us to move forward with the process of changing the ordinance as we presented, or if you'd like us to make other changes or whatever the desire of the boards may be. And if you want me to go through each one of these ones, I will, if you want me to do that for a general discussion.
Questions for the County Manager?
If I could just add one comment. At the last meeting, there were some questions about the hotel motel tax and application of that, and I just wanted to address that briefly. I do think under the state law as well as our ordinance, the hotel motel tax would apply to these lodgings. What I would recommend is that we incorporate a provision just like we have in the short-term rental. It's at section 30-521, basically that same language, just put it in there so they're on notice that they're responsible for that, and I can help Joey and Sharon with that. And utilize the same wording that's in the statute. I think the wording the statute uses like overnight accommodations or overnight stays, accommodations, or lodgings. Like there's 3 references. I would say let's just mirror that language to be safe. And I think that would be a nice add and be clear and put everyone on notice that they're covered by that. There was also a question that was a novel one, I think by Commissioner Gaines, about whether we could charge hotel motel tax for venue, like special event rentals. So for instance, it's a conference room or a ballroom. I don't see support for that. It's not entirely clear, but our ordinance would particularly cut against that because our ordinance refers to it as a room occupancy tax. I don't think that's what's contemplated when you read the state statute because it does say rooms, but I think it's all coordinated with the rooms, accommodations, and lodging. So creative approach perhaps to taxation, but I'm not sure that's, we want to make that new law.
Questions?
I know I'm being kind of like I don't know on this, but I think this is a good idea. But I do think that there needs to be some form of I don't know the word I'm looking for, like when they're gonna have overnight guests? Anyone? What's the word I'm looking for?
Notice?
No.
Yeah, like kind of a heads up. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We talked about this last time. Like, we don't know, like right now, we don't even know if they're being used. And we said that it's only based on complaints, right? If they get in trouble, is that correct? That, like right now, they're not allowed to have overnight guests. They would only get in trouble if there was a complaint to you, correct?
They're not supposed to have overnight guests.
Correct. You would only know about it if there's a complaint. Okay. So I just think that moving forward, like, I think we talked to the fire department, like when there's hotels, we always expect overnight guests. That's what they do. But on these special events to know, like, there's a wedding venue going, like, do we get notice if there's someone staying, if there's weddings going on at the different venues?
You don't, when you get a VRBO, I mean, VRBO has people stay there, we don't know.
Well, like, okay, for instance, when I was looking to get married, we ended up getting married in Dawson County, but I was going to get married in Roswell. We were looking at an event place. We had to give the city notice that we were going to be getting married at this venue. And were we going to have overnight guests or not? We had to let the city know beyond the venue. The venue was not responsible for letting them know, but we, as the couple that was getting married, had to let the city know so that they could have party, just so that everyone was aware that there was something going on that was going to have a large amount of people. I guess if we don't do that for venues, we wouldn't do it for the night, but maybe we should. I don't know, just kind of like, do we have a way to kind of keep up with that so that, you know, fire and EMS would know? Because I know like some of our fire stations sometimes aren't even open with some of the venues that are, what's the station that's always closed down because of lack of staff? Six. No, but it's been closed a lot this year because of staff. But if we knew that a venue close to that one was having a large amount of people, we could potentially, does that make sense? If you are totally against it, I'm just talking in the wind, that's fine too.
The only comment I would make along those lines, and I'm not sure about the city reference that you mentioned, did you say it was Roswell?
City of
Yeah,
Roswell.
I'm somewhat familiar with their codes, but
Well,
I don't
okay, this
know.
was also 12 years ago.
Okay,
So
well,
maybe
yeah,
that's,
I
you
haven't
know,
messed with their
updated.
codes in 12, yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be. But there is a limitation for overnight accommodations to a total of 10 bedrooms. So in terms of crowds, I think the concern would be more about maybe wedding guests in the venue. And so
Not overnight guest.
I'm not sure that adds a lot.
Okay.
So we're going to have maybe the 250 people there for the event, which would be
But it
more
wouldn't matter about
fire,
overnight guest.
and then just 10 rooms for overnight. So
Okay.
if there's a concern about notifying for public safety purposes, then I think it's bigger than overnight, I guess is
Okay.
all I'm offering.
And then what about the taxation purposes? Because they wouldn't have to pay them now, but if they spend the night, they would.
Right.
So if they, would they have to do something with planning and development if they chose to become this?
Hotel, motel.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do have, I think it was, we talked about this morning where we do have some VRBOs that don't go through the third party, and this might be code enforcement or where's our tax people?
There
Or
were-
may not
there-
money people.
these
They can,
business would be-
self-report that funds versus going through the third party. So if I had a VRBO that wasn't, I rented it without.
I just meant, well, do they have to get a special permit to do this, to accommodate overnight through planning and development?
Would they have to? No.
No?
Have to be,
That's not in here, no.
Okay. Okay.
well, they have to meet certain things
Yes.
based on this. I mean,
And they would have business license.
Yeah.
Presumably.
Well, they already have a business license for an event center, but they wouldn't have to do anything additional through us to let us know that they have people spending the night.
No, not as it's drafted, but I mean, that's an interesting point. They have to have a business license to be a wedding venue. I mean, we could include that, something that they need to give the county notice if they wish to take advantage of these provisions.
I mean,
I think at one point we even contemplated whether the overnight accommodations would be a special use and go through a zoning process. But I think that was not,
I don't
didn't
think
garner a
that's
lot of
necessary.
favor.
I just think that if like it's not allowed now and we're thinking about allowing it, what's the difference if they don't have to let us know that they're going to be doing that? There is no difference in that, I guess.
It's on the honor system that you're gonna abide by the rules, and if there's a problem, we'll enforce it. And as far as the taxation, again, we're all required to pay our taxes and register with the state. And if you don't, eventually our friends at the IRS will find you eventually. But I hear all your points, yes.
I just to your point about the fire safety, if you look at statute 11, it does say that they are required to have a fire safety prevention emergency response service plan submitted to Dawson County and reviewed by us. So to your point, we may not know that there's when an actual wedding is going on, but at
But we
least
know their
they do.
plans to have.
They do have to have a fire safety prevention and emergency response plan.
And I think
I don't have it pulled up in front of me.
a valid point, we do make our VRBOs have some sort of permit.
Well, see, that's
So
my
we
thing.
Should follow maybe the same thing with it, even though it's not a VRBO, they can't use it as an any day rental like a VRBO can, but they still.
They're still
there's
making money off of
checks in
people
here
saying they're
we
correct.
have That,
Yeah, there's a
This would be-
permit,
Yeah.
right, for short-term rentals.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I just think that we should follow that same suit. If we're going to follow it in other ordinances for the same type concept, we should probably follow suit in that with this one, just to keep everything.
That very well may be the solution, that
it's still looked at like a
that you
VRBO.
have to register as a short-term rental.
I just think it makes checks and balances a little bit.
That could be
easier
number
there.
15.
Cause that, I think it would be good to have like a 24-hour contact number. And I think that's what we do for short-term rentals. If there was an issue and, whoever's enforcing it would
Yeah.
have a contact to call.
So I think and I do think we talked about this last time. I don't know that I'd recommend that they register as a short-term rental because that is defined differently
Sure.
because it's in a single-family home and there's all those different limitations. But we could have a permit that's called something different, wedding venue overnight accommodations permit or something. So
Yeah,
I
just
th-
something to.
Yeah, I think that's a good
you know.
point.
If we did that, could we make them, I would assume we would make them abide by the same regulations for the most part, as far as accommodations goes, correct?
Well, do you mean like having the 24-hour contact? And, I
Correct.
mean, we could look at those short-term rental requirements and we could, include those. I mean, we had not done that or Sharon had not done that with this draft, but we can certainly look at
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think when we vetted out the short-term rental thing, it was, I think our mindset, the way we crafted that was around a lot of these lake houses that were tight lots and small places. We had a ton of cars that were parking on, a single driveway. So some of that may not be applicable
Sure.
because we're talking about 10-acre lots, but pick out the parts like you're talking about
Right.
and yeah.
That in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least we know,
Angela's point was good at maximum occupancy. I mean, we say 10 bedrooms, I think.
it does say 10 bedrooms, but it doesn't say
No, how many?
limit on the number
That
of,
would be tied to environmental.
yeah.
That's right.
I mean, whatever their septic tank capacity is, they could have 10 bedrooms and still couldn't have but 10 people, depending on that.
We can continue to, I think the comments we heard tonight, we can certainly, I don't see a hurdle that we can't draft language
Okay,
to that direction. And
all right. Thank you. All right, let's move on to new business. First up, we have presentation of requests for a new shared server for the district attorney's office. District Attorney Lee Darren. Lee.
Thank you. And Conley Greer, my supervising ADA for Dawson County, is also here in case there's some more detailed questions. I come from a basis of, it's my understanding that our office uses twice as much server space on our own than all the rest of the county combined. Somebody told me that just a few minutes ago. That seems a lot. But it's because, of course, of all the audios and the videos and everything else that we have to store and we share with the public defender's office. We're out of space. We had put it in our general budget presentation to maybe start January 1, but I was urged to go forward with it to try to see if we could get that done earlier than that. And that's the reason for my being here today. We asked IT department to take a look at it for us, and they recommended a certain server as we have outlined in our report. It's a 176 terabyte something server with a certain processor and all this sort of thing. And it would provide the significant amount of storage for the future that we need. The approximate cost is a bit over $20,189. But we also request an additional $3,000 per year for Synology C2 cloud storage. Now, a lot of this technical language is above and beyond me, but this is what we ought to get and what we need for our purposes was recommended to us by Dawson County IT. And so this is what we're asking for so that we can have the appropriate storage for a long time to come. Because the 29 terabyte server that we currently have is just out of space. And we've got a good part of the rest of the year, and we still need to have that space. Now, as I said the other day in my budget presentation, we're trying to make some steps to act after conviction to maybe not store as much information as we have in the past. I think on misdemeanor cases, there's a lot of space that we can clear up after conviction or after disposal of the case otherwise to try to, minimize the space that we use, but we just use a lot. So that's my request that we move forward with this now if the commission sees fit so that we can begin to use the space. Now, as far as more technical questions that y'all may have, I think Herman Thompson's still here. Are you still here, Herman?
He's right there.
He is right behind me. He's my shadow, and Conley's right over there in case you have any more questions as to what we need and why.
Always good to have backup.
Yes, sir, it is.
Questions for our DA?
All right, well, I would appreciate your favorable consideration to this and hope that we can get it underway earlier because we don't want the price to go up either. And this is apparently what we can do it for presently. Thank you.
I
Thank
do
you, sir.
have a question maybe
Oh, go ahead.
maybe for Herman, but what's the 3,000 per year for cloud storage? Is that a backup for this or is that additional
That's
storage?
correct. It is a cloud backup for the physical device.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other?
So when our officers, when they upload their videos, do they do that on a daily basis regardless of what interactions they've had? They stop and is it a wireless upload to a server that saves it and then they have access to that server? Is that what this is?
Depending on the source of the video, some is wireless, some is direct connection
Okay.
to their servers that are specifically for that purpose at the Dawson County Sheriff's Office.
But that's not this server. So this server will
Correct.
pull that data in. And so what kind of servers do we have there that's storing the video? Is it equivalent to what we have here?
It's basically, it's not quite as large as this. The difference is that Dawson County Sheriff's Office stores their video. The DA's office stores Dawson County Sheriff's, FBI's, other county departments. Lots of different sources come into the DA's office when they're putting together a trial. And through chain of custody, it has to remain there throughout the trial, appeals, all that sort of thing.
So would,
Some felony cases, 25 years before. we
Yeah.
actually-
and I know you IT guys freak out about penetration points and things like that. With it being like, the wireless transmissions from a deputy's car, and I don't know how this works, but maybe they pull up to the front of the jail and it wirelessly transmits to their server.
That
and then
is
you're
correct.
pulling data out of that into your server, and from a malware perspective, during that wireless transmission point, which my naive think that's probably a weak link where somebody comes in there and captures in between that wireless transmission point.
It's encrypted and
All
point
this
to
is,
point.
okay.
No other device has any ability to be able to see that data. And even if they could, it would look like scrambled eggs.
Okay.
And as far as the cloud backup, we have no backup present. So
Correct.
that's why we're asking for the.
So that was my question. Since we have no cloud backup currently, will this allow us, with this $3,000, will it allow us to back that up as well? Or is that just for what's going on this new server?
No, that's just for the new server. The one that they currently use, that will be transferred over to the new server.
So we're going to just totally do away with the old server, put all of that stuff
And it's
onto this.
actually, when you think in terms of server, what they're using right now is actually called a network storage appliance. And its sole purpose is it's basically, think of it in terms of a huge external hard drive. And that's exactly what it does, is it stores that data. What we gave them is not the best way to do it for their purposes. So this is a much better solution. So
And you did say suspect maybe about 5+ years of
hopefully
storage.
5+ years, definitely, because of the size of this and their past few years of usage. We're not going up to 8K video or anything like that anytime soon. So we're pretty confident that this will capture everything.
And this system does have the ability to expand where the other one did not, correct?
Yeah, this one has the ability actually with a cable in the back to be able to add 40 more hard drives to it. So we could actually double the capacity that it currently is. And if they're using that much, wow.
And
That's a lot of data.
and this actually goes in your physical rack in your
That's correct.
server room. That's okay.
Exactly.
And it's not tied to any of our other infrastructure.
No, it is completely separate.
What's the lifespan of this server? What's the
It's gonna be
5-year, 10-year?
5+ years.
Right.
I would say 5 to 10 years. So.
Other questions? Thank you.
Appreciate my technical backup. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Next up, we have presentation RFP 441-24 playground upgrade for Rock Creek and Veterans Memorial Park, Park and Recreation Director Matt Payne.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As always, it's a pleasure to come before you, and thank you for letting me represent the Recreation Department. We are talking about RFP 441-24, which is playground upgrade. If you'll recall graciously, graciously in SPLOST 7, voters approved some playground upgrades, playground the installation of new playgrounds at both Rock Creek and Veterans Park. Through some preliminary work that I did beforehand, we established a number for the budget for both of these, and that budget was set at $900,000. So we went forth with this RFP. The RFP was opened on April the 2nd of 2024, and we did receive 6 proposals. Again, as always, Melissa Hawk makes sure that we cross our Ts and dot our Is, and we made sure that the bid was done according to all of policy. The evaluation committee that was set up for this RFP was myself, along with the 3 ladies in my office, which is Buffy Hamill, Rhonda Watson, and Chris Rowan. And facilitating it, of course, was Melissa Hawk. I will say that this is the first project that I've been on here in my 6 years at Dawson County that I had truly zero to do with. This one was turned over to Buffy, Rhonda, and Chris, and they did a phenomenal job, as I'm sure you'll see in this presentation just moving forward. They handled it all. We decided as a team that they were going to try to tackle this, and they did it all, and they did a fantastic job of doing this. I tried to get them to come and actually present it tonight, but that didn't quite go over as well. So here I am. The scope of the work is just what you think it would be. Without going into the great details, we are going to be upgrading all of the facility itself. No more mulch. It's going to be the handicap accessible rubber flooring. It's going to be all handicap accessible equipment, and everything there is going to be state of the art. We have met with this particular vendor, who we're going to discuss in just a moment. Met with them in great detail to make sure that we're getting exactly what we want. And we were just very, very thrilled with what they turned into us. But the scope of the work is just what you think it would be. They're going to be removing the old equipment, installing the new equipment, and it's going to be a turnkey installation. Okay, so some of the offers that we received, as you'll notice, we did have 6 vendors that did turn in bids for us, and those range from anywhere from 1.5 million all the way down to the 579,000. And let's just be honest, that number, that 570, when you look at that 579 compared to the over $1 million for everybody else, just about it, that was kind of an eye opener to us as well. To say that we done our homework is an incredible understatement. We met with this company. I've called every reference in the state of Georgia, as well as a couple in South Carolina. Great references on this company. I am 100% fully committed that they would do a fantastic job. But the low bid did come from a company called Great Outdoors Play, which is not a new company in the world of recreation. They've done several playgrounds throughout the state of Georgia, none for Dawson County or any of our surrounding counties, but several in the southern part of the state and a couple in South Carolina. Great references on those guys. And again, we met with them a ton and asked a million questions. Let me rephrase. The ladies in the office met with them a ton and asked a million questions and got all of our questions answered. And we felt very, very, very solidly with those.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
The equipment, you may get into this, but the equipment itself varies per bid. So Great American Outdoor, do they manufacture their own and then Playworks manufactures their own? And you kind of said, all right, we want a merry-go-round that's ADA, and then they.
Yes. Now, perhaps that may be one of the reasons that Great American is a little bit cheaper. They do manufacture their own.
Okay.
Whereas these other companies may go, I know, for example, Game Time, that's the big one. That's the ones that does most of everything is Game Time. They obviously bring in equipment from 1,000 different vendors, which is great, fantastic, but maybe that's why their price was a little bit more.
Okay.
But Great American Play does most of their own manufacturing, installation, everything. Moving forward, this particular slide does detail how everybody graded out. Not only was Great American Play significantly cheaper, but we also noticed that we graded them very well on their presentation as well. It wasn't like they were just a ton cheaper, and that's why we decided to present them. They actually graded out the presentation that they give, plus the references that we did, all were really, really good. So it wasn't just a low cost. It was a really good company, good product, and the cost actually helped a ton. So they graded out the highest. So with that, my staff respectfully request the board to accept proposals received and award a contract to Great Outdoors Play in the amount of $579,912 and a 10% county control contingency. And this is utilizing SPLOST 7 funds. And with that, I will be ready and willing to take any questions that you may have.
Questions for Matt?
New fence,
Yes,
no, it's turnkey.
it
everything's
is.
turnkey.
Yeah, everything's brand new. Yes.
What's your maintenance savings? Just out of curiosity, because we have to put mulch into a certain depth level now. So
Which is very difficult.
yeah, over a period of time, I mean, there's some ROI on that too.
I knew you'd ask me something like that, Chris, and I don't know. You're my friend, but you always ask something that I don't know. I'll get back to you. It will be a savings, yes, for sure. But it's also so much cleaner. It's so much better. You install this one time now, and as long as it's state regulated, you don't have to go back and check it constantly like we do now. Okay, thank you.
Good answer.
Thank you. I thought that you might like that one.
It looks great to me. I'm pumped.
We are very excited about this project. We are very excited.
Do y'all have any plans for the old playground equipment
Yes.
there?
Okay, so most of the equipment is outdated and it's old and it's going to be just obviously pulled out for scrap. But now there are some pieces in there that have been donated by citizens or citizens groups. For example, at Rock Creek, we have the train set that was donated by the Rotary. I'm sorry, not Rotary. The ladies, the ladies that the
Women's Club?
Yes, wonderful ladies. Talked with those folks, and they were very excited about us putting that down at our dog park at Veterans Park. We have a couple of ADA pieces that are in the playground at Veterans Park. Now we're going to move those down to the small playground, which is beside the big pavilion. So we're going to be saving those. A lot of the stuff that's in there is going to be scrapped and taken out because it's just old and outdated, but we are going to be saving some. Also, to that point, we have a couple of benches and a couple of big swings that are in both of the playgrounds that have been bought by citizens over the years for either in memory or in honor of somebody. We are going to be extremely responsible to make sure that those get placed in prominent spots throughout the park as well. We're not throwing anything like that away.
Other questions?
Was the playground that was just put in beside the big pavilion, that was not the same company, correct?
No,
Yeah, we've never used them before.
no, ma'am.
Okay.
Actually, that, if you'll remember, that's that same playground that was recycled
Okay.
from a couple of other different places.
Okay.
And they kind of put a fresh coat of paint on it, probably needs a little work done to it as well, but that's another project for another time for sure.
I'd like to, thank you and your staff for putting this together because I know most of the ladies that worked on this and they truly care about the kids and they want what's right, for them.
Let me tell you, the ladies that got to work on this, they love, well, number one, they love Dawson County and they love this park system. And they kind of use this, I believe, as a steering to show how much they love the park because they put an enormous amount of hours and effort into this.
Well, we appreciate you giving them the shout out. 'Cause I
Yeah.
know, like,
They are
know
the
that-
best.
that they do a lot, but because they choose not to present, and I do not blame them, no one would ever know.
Yeah, I got the best staff by far in any place. Easy.
Gonna get an argument there. All right, any other questions for Matt? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You have the best park staff, though,
Nah.
guaranteed.
All right. Presentation of professional exemption and budget request for engineering service for site development of future Fire Station 3 location Harmony Church Road. Phase 1, County Manager Joey Leverett. Joey.
Thank you again, Chairman. If you may recall, a month or two ago, we had a discussion about the development of the Harmony Church property for a future fire station and fueling site and maybe some park and rec needs. We don't know exactly on that yet, but we're looking at doing this, developing this site in phases. The first phase is going to be the grading of the lot. The lot does have some significant grade changes, and we want to go ahead and get it pad ready for the fire station and other needs in that location. So step one to get this going is to have a engineer design the site plan so that we can have some viable plans to bid the grading in the future. Hopefully we'll be doing that the first of the year. But we went out and got 3 proposals from some engineering firms, and those prices range for this, just as simply for the site engineering and plans. Also looking at some stormwater permitting as well. Those prices range from $56,900 up to $140,000. The most responsive bid was from BMK Engineering. Their proposal was $56,900. And I'm asking the board to consider this and approve this this work, and also for a professional exemption for professional services exemption for this work. And these funding for this will be for SPLOTS and SPLOTS 2 funds.
Questions for Joey? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we have presentation of proposal to increase annual paid time off, PTO payout. Human Resource Risk Management Director, Christy Finley. Christy.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. I come before you today to ask for your consideration for a proposal of increasing our annual PTO payout. Our policy as it currently stands allows for each employee that earns PTO to withdraw up to 40 hours of PTO once per year. This helps in many ways the employee. It can help with them funding extra individual interests through the year. But also one of the main keys is that it helps them buy down their annual rollover PTO that they accrue, especially if they are in departments that have possibly been short-staffed and they are limited on the vacation time that they can take. This gives them an opportunity to take a little bit of extra time as far as the hours and payment without having to actually take the days. Currently, as it stands, we have 3 class groups. We have 80-hour employees, 84-hour employees, and 96-hour employees, but they are all rated for the same amount of leave approval, which is the 40 hours. What we are proposing is to potentially increase the role or the PTO payout amount, but do it by class. For instance, our 80-hour employees, we would like to propose that their PTO payout be increased up to 120 hours. 84-hour employees up to 126 hours, and 96-hour employees up to 144. That is equating to approximately a 3 weeks time. Now, that may seem like a lot right off the cuff, but one of the background reasons we're asking for this is because since the PTO payout, or I'm sorry, the PTO accrual rate was last inducted, we have started seeing employees going over their max rollover for the year. We've seen it begin about 3 years ago, and then last year it was a little more increased, and this year it's becoming quite significant. We have 340 employees that participate in the program, and of those, this year, we're going to have 55 that are going to be over their max at the end of the year. With that, that is for all 3 classes, by the way. And for those 55, we've already have 12 that have already utilized that 40-hour buyback as of this point. We anticipate before the end of the year that we're going to have, well, let me back up and say, currently, we have 37 that have already crossed the threshold. Before the end of the year, we will have 18 more, which will be a total of 55. Looking even at the number of those who have already utilized their 40 and who have not, even those that have not, many of them are still going to lose time at the end of the year because the 40 will just not be enough to save their time. We have 2/3 of that group that is accruing time at the 0 to 1 year up to the 9th year. So we only have 107 that are accruing for years 10 to 25 plus. So we're really looking at 1/3 of the population at this point, but we're seeing those numbers increase steadily each year. So at your, if you will consider agreeing with this proposal, again, we would like to propose an increase for 80-hour employees to receive a payout up to 120 hours, 84-hour employees up to 126 hours, and 96-hour employees up to 144, but still maintaining at least the minimum bank of 20 hours. So that means before they can receive up to that payout or whatever amount they choose within that range, they would always have to maintain at least 20 hours in their bank.
And as it sits right now, they can cash in a week.
They can.
Okay,
yes.
is it 40 hours across the board or is it separated
It's
by
40
class?
hours across the board. That's
okay.
why we would really
Okay.
like to see it adjusted for the
Per class,
classes.
okay. I just don't have the presentation in front of me. I didn't print mine, so I just wanted to clarify.
So their minimum bank currently is 20 hours. They have to keep 20.
Have to
So if they
have-
have 60, an 80 hour,
Exactly.
they can
yes.
buy back 40.
Yes.
Okay.
And we can consider increasing that if that would be the board's discretion, but
I was just wondering if
Um,
maybe we should look at a minimum of 40, which would be a week, and maybe, so what would that be? 40 and 42 and 48 for the 96 would be a week.
yes.
So that's some kind of a, I mean, I definitely don't want them to lose their time. So maybe a combination of the two to give them the opportunity to buy back, especially if they got 144 hours worth of buyback. That's a lot. So,
That's
Yeah.
how we implemented the 20 is, even though we do want to encourage staff to take part of this, at the same time, you never know what might happen unexpectedly.
absolutely,
So we don't want them to have 0 time available.
exactly. So maybe we look at, I mean, whatever y'all want to do, but maybe we look at a combination or something other along that line. It still gives them a great opportunity to do a big buyback if they need to.
And it will be, the language we use is up to, so it doesn't mean that they are required to take the 120. They
Right,
can use any amount, but they
Right.
can only do it once per year.
once per year.
Do we have a calculation on what it affects our budget? I mean, isn't there a dollar amount that's associated with what?
So the PTO, as far as the dollar amount, is just paid out at the employee's wage.
But
but the PTO is already accounted for financially because it's listed
Accrued,
in the PTO bank.
accrued in the bank. Okay.
But it would be up and above their normal salary though, because you're giving them extra. It's not like their PTO in their normal salary is if they actually take that time off.
Right.
So it'd be above.
Well, there is a number that's associated with what it would cost us. Do we know what that number is? I mean, is there any way, I mean, obviously everybody's paid at different scales, and so to know who's taking it, I mean, somehow
We
we
could
gotta
look at,
solve for that.
so there is a way to get it, obviously. I mean, we could take a look at the people, like you said, what was it? So many people have the ability, they're at that point or will be at that point by the end of this year.
Correct.
We could look at those people
See what the
and
answer
see what
is.
that dollar amount would be. Even based on just the maximum though.
Yes.
What you just said. Okay. All right, so if we get that information, I think that would be good.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. Christie? Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have presentation of request to write off old uncollectible ambulance accounts. Chief Financial Officer Vicky Nykerk. Ms. Vicky.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. I come before you today to request to be able to write off old ambulance billing accounts. See, right. In 2017, the county adopted a policy of periodically writing off old collectible ambulance accounts. Once the billing company has exhausted their efforts of collections, the accounts are turned over to a professional collections company. They make numerous attempts at collecting these accounts, but once an account is older than 4 years, it can't be pursued any longer. Currently, the county has 667 accounts from 2019 to 2020 that need to be written off. These accounts total $355,543.37. This write-off will be written off against our allowance, excuse me, for doubtful accounts, and there's currently a little over $2.3 million in this allowance. And so what happens is every year when the auditors come, we determine how much we need to add to that allowance for doubtful accounts. So that amount is already expensed. So this won't hit our bottom line for this year. It's that expense is pretty much already taken care of. It's just a matter of using that allowance. So anyway, I request your consideration for this write-off, and it will help our books and it will help, help the billing company. And these accounts are reported to the credit bureaus. So there are repercussions.
Questions for Vicky?
How often do we do this? We do
Once
this
a year.
Once
We
a
do it
year.
once
and
a
it-
year. We usually do it after the audit.
Okay.
Yeah, that way we know what's in our allowance for doubtful accounts.
It seems like that number in the past has been 500,000.
It has been, it's gradually coming down. I think they're, hopefully it'll continue to decrease.
And we went with a new agency 3 or so years ago, and I'm just wondering if.
And we have a new collections company as well
Okay.
now.
So that could be the result of it coming down.
Mhm. It helps.
I have a question. You may not know this. I'm just curious. Who calculates how much an ambulance bill is? Like,
It depends upon the service.
okay,
There's the basic life support, and then there's what they call that advanced life support, BLS and ALS. And so when the ambulance picks up a person, they put in their computer what service they're providing. And then that information is called a PCR, patient care report. Is that correct, Billy?
That's correct.
And then, I'm sorry,
Killing it.
Chairman.
doing great.
And so then the paramedics submit that to the billing company.
Okay,
And that's how it's determined.
gotcha. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Have a lot of factors involved in it, like, do they get medicines? Do they not get medicine?
They get an IV.
Do they
all
get
these
cardiac
things.
monitor?
Yep.
Do
I
they
just didn't
not
know
get
if
cardiac
the county
monitor?
came up with that money, if there was
Oh,
a
no.
system to come up with that money.
No,
I wasn't
they-
sure.
We have to have an ordinance that states all that stuff on it.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's what it said. We actually have ordinance. All right. Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have discussion of short-term rental and bed and breakfast ordinance, County Marshal Angela Byers. Angela.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. This feels like deja vu. Seems like we were just together a few hours ago. Before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and provide you with a handout. I'll tell you when you need to look at it. Let me get my clicker. So this all came about by, did you have something, Chris? I'm sorry. I wasn't.
Trying to look at it. Look at it.
I'm like, it's a surprise. Don't anybody touch it or turn it over. So this all came about, actually, the marshal's office has been writing down notations for a while on things that we wanted to come before y'all and talk about as it pertains to the short-term rental, bed and breakfast ordinance. However, just recently, the long-term planning committee has also been talking about short-term rentals. So I know they had proposed some questions to the board, and we thought this was a great time for us to just put it all together and come before you and talk about it. So today I'm going to be doing a presentation. We're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you a little highlight on where we've been, where we're at today, and some suggestions of where we would like to go. Before I get started, I do want to say that no matter how well an ordinance is written, no matter how good it is no good without enforcement. And I will tell you, this particular ordinance has proved this time and time again, particularly this year in 2024. So just to give you a little history on the short-term rental bed and breakfast, a lot of people didn't know this, but we did not actually have a short-term rental ordinance. But well, we had short-term rental and bed and breakfast all housed under the land use ordinance. It was just kind of stuck in there somewhere. So we wanted to have an impact on it. Frankly, it just needed to be tightened up a bit. So we all began looking at it and getting together with the attorneys back in 2022, and then took us about a year and a half to put it together. And then in 2021, it was presented before the Board of Commissioners in December. It was passed on December 2nd, but it wasn't going into effect until February 16th of 2022. So proactively, because this impacted all of our existing owners, which at the time, I think we had about 55, we went ahead and mailed out, golly, felt like something grabbed me by the throat for a second, excuse me. So we mailed out a letter to all of our permit owners, just showing them what the new ordinance was and when everything would go into effect, because if they renewed before that time, it didn't really impact the new rate in particular. But if they renewed their ordinance afterwards, then it did impact them. So that happened February 16. I do want to talk about now, which is part of our history. We have dedicated resources for us, or we've dedicated our admin assistant to do this, along with the thousands of other things that she's doing. And we have increased our active permits by 117%, 88 since April of this year. And year to date, we have 164 as compared to 76 in 2023. And I think 76 is probably the most that we've had in the 5 years that I've been here, or any time prior to that. I'm pretty sure 76 last year was the highest point. So our current state of the short-term rental bed and breakfast. Some of the improvements that had been made when this ordinance came out, and I have to commend the Board of Commissioners. I mean, it's an excellent ordinance. It's clear, it's concise, and it's enforceable, which is very important. Since it came out, we have improved some of the application paperwork. We have improved it. It's very self-explanatory and informative to people who are applying. It provides them with numbers of who to call, like if you need a septic tank letter or a couple of other things, we put numbers and tell them how to go about that. we have established a system of checks and balances. We have online oversight, which I talked a little bit about today. But when I say online oversight, we don't just issue your permit and just leave it at that. We're constantly monitoring, as I had alluded to today, Airbnb, VRBO, et cetera, just to make sure that you are adhering to the ordinances. Because as I stated earlier, that's where our complaints come in. Our complaints come from noise, people parking in the row, and too many people at a particular house. That's where all of our complaints have always come through. And I'm going to reiterate this again. I can't say it enough. I know, sitting in that position, answering those phone calls, that my phones would start burning up in April because it was warmer weather. All the college kids were going on spring break, and it would just burn up until October because then you've got the summer and then you've got the fall. Complaints, complaints, complaints. We went out on more short-term rentals than anything. And at the time, I had actually spoken with the director to say, how about if we look at one of these services to see what we can do with this? Because we've got tons of people out there doing short-term rentals. We don't have enough people. We don't know what to do. The sheriff's office does not want to be bothered by all this. They don't have, the capacity. So anyway, that used to go on, but we have found through code enforcement immediately addressing complaints, violation, guests with maximum capacity, no permits, and inaccurate advertising. We address all of that, and I will tell you this year alone, and I think I'll say it a little later on, but I'm going to jump to the last bullet. In 2024, we have received 2 unfounded complaints compared to the countless numbers in the past, and 0 complaints of safety, security, and quality of life. And I can just tell you, for 5 years of dealing with this, that is unbelievable. So some of the challenges, well, let me go back. Again, I'm saying, and I think this is important, I'm amazed. I've been reading this the whole time without my glasses, but now I'm getting blurry. We have increased the county's annual revenue by $26,400. And again, I'm including the hotel motel, because as we discussed today, if these non-permitted places have not been identified, we don't necessarily know if we are or not getting the hotel motel taxes. And particularly, we don't know if it's rental companies outside of Airbnb and VRBO. So
Out of curiosity, do you know statistically how many of the ones that we do have permitted are Airbnb, VRBO, third party versus, I don't know, what the non-third party, private, that they submit their own?
we have all of that on a spreadsheet, and I don't have it with me, Chris.
I would say the majority of them are Airbnb and VRBO.
Right. Well, we do, but a lot of them in Big Canoe, we're fine. We have a lot in Big Canoe that are with several mountain rental places. So as you probably know, the majority of the short-term rentals, and I have a huge map of it, I can show y'all because we turn it in monthly to finance. But we have a map, but the majority's in Big Canoe in that mountainous area, and then the lake with some spattered in between. So some of the challenges are that we found, which we can't really address tonight. I'm just throwing these out here, but we're working on this, is the inability for people to pay online. That's a challenge because right now, we have to, y'all have probably heard that. We don't have a published late fee, although it is referenced in the ordinance. And it has been challenging to cite people living out of state. We have a lot of people that own these and they live outside of the state of Georgia. However, I'm still proposing that we do one thing to address this, but we were just recently speaking with magistrate court, and we have found that we can, through the state of Georgia and through real property, that we can post a citation on a door without having someone sign for it. So that will be a more rare event, but that option does exist. And the judge is very familiar with it. He's the one that told us how to go about it.
Does Big Canoe do their own internal management of these? I'm sure there's like a neighbor can call Big Canoe's management company, and do they self-manage a lot of these?
I used to think they did, but we just actually had a situation that I was surprised that they did not. It was, we had complaints, but by the time actually that we heard about it, it was done. But we've addressed it. I think that they do, because we used to be very active. They used to send us their lists, but it was very confusing, quite frankly, because they have something, and I don't know what it is with their,
Yeah.
oh, well, maybe you can explain that to me. I knew you looked familiar. So,
So we do, not been very long, we do have an annual fee that we charge anyone that is renting out a residence, VRBO, whatever. And you're correct, there are several management companies that are independent of VRBO, that, you know, are not necessarily online. So there's another opportunity there to not know. We try to notify residents that there is a county requirement. And a lot of folks are suddenly, since we implemented the annual fee, they're suddenly having oh shucks, I didn't know that.
But if you get a complaint from one of the neighbors, or do y'all manage the complaint? I mean, do you have an 800
Yeah,
number?
our public safety, so example,
Right.
blocking roads or
Right.
excessive noise, our public safety will respond to those.
Okay.
That's how we manage that.
But they still have to adhere to your HOA or
Yes.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. Okay.
I will say in Big Canoe, primarily the complaints we get are that someone has a house that is not being permitted. So we start investigating that. So that's become a big thing that so did you want to add anything else? Okay. Do you know how many y'all have right now in Big Canoe?
It's not as many as we thought.
Maybe y'all should share databases if you're doing the same thing. It would be,
Well, we did once before, and that's what I was going to say. I don't know if you recollect this, but the problem that I found was y'all have a database. At some point, I think it's because of the HOA, you had asked people, this is what residents has told me. They told me that y'all asked them to sign up if they have an HOA, if they have a short-term rental. But I think at some point they went ahead and signed up, even if they didn't have one, because I think there was going to, for some reason, I was being told that if they didn't do it during a time frame, if they didn't register then that they had a short-term rental, that the door was closed for them or something.
Well, year, so
Oh, okay.
we have a deadline each year that you need to sign up, pay your fee. And if you, maybe beginning of your year, you're not renting your property, but you think you may later in the year that you want to. So it doesn't mean you can't sign up later in the year, just.
Okay. I think there was confusion, or maybe I was confused, because I called on a huge list.
And there's no discussion at this point of any trying to create some sort of cap.
Okay. I would say, if I had to guesstimate, I would say you probably have about 70 something. If I just had to throw out a number, maybe, well, then we're missing some. Yeah, we do need to combine, we do need to compare our lists. Oh, that is correct. Right, okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you very much. Well, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Craig Price.
Craig Price. Very nice to meet you. Any more questions on that page? Look at me, Kristen. So now I'm going to share some of the challenges that the Long Range Planning Committee, some of the concerns and requests that they had, which very much, a lot of them paralleled with things we were already looking at, and I'm going to go through them. I don't necessarily have the recommendation for all of these, but we'll talk about them as we go through. So they requested that we restrict certain zonings from having short-term rental bed and breakfast. Currently, the only restrictions are you can't have them in commercial zoning. Those are the restrictions. They also talked about limiting short-term rental bed and breakfast to agricultural zones. And in their questioning, they referenced R1 zoning, which is, I think, in Lumpkin County. That's very similar to our RA and RSR here in the county. And a question that came up, and I think this is a valid question, is would we recommend limiting year-round rentals to these zonings as well? Would we, Dawson County? And some of the comments, and I just wanted to share this based on our experience and what we're seeing. The marshal's office receives hands down more complaints on yearly rentals than we do on any short-term rentals. And our application process, so we feel like that's not necessary in Dawson County. I'm just going to be candid with that. The next line says it. Between our application process, our oversight of these businesses that we've just outlined, and parameters that we have implemented allow for these short-term business owners and our residents to amicably coexist as neighbors. I mean, that's our whole goal, because while everyone should respect the right of a property owner to rent out their house, but you also have to respect the rights of their neighbors, and how is that going to impact them? Because everyone should be able to enjoy their personal property. We're not seeing problems here in Dawson County. We're not getting the complaints. So that. They also asked us to consider distance requirements, particularly concerning houses that were built before we had zoning. And now people are buying these houses, they're remodeling them, and they're making them into very large houses. And they're just getting closer. They're just huge houses in small neighborhoods. I'm not sure what the solution is to there, other than just tight, our zoning measurements. Thoughts on that? But that's one of their concerns.
Majority of those are probably around the lake lots, which are
Yes.
historically very small. And
Yes.
there was vacation, tiny houses built in the 50s, 60s there that now
BCR.
they're going to the edges of the.
As far as they can on the lot lines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be you'd have to change the setbacks on VRB, or not VRBO, the vacation rental.
BCR, yeah. So that's a concern. The following concerns we can address on the next page. So one of their concern was the maximum occupancies, and I know they had reference Forsyth County and maybe another place. Increased neighborhood information, communication, transparency, and just overall good manners to your neighbors. Houses on sewer, how are we addressing that? On septic, houses on septic, their total overnight occupancy, the daytime occupancy limits. And they had said we should require mailing a notice to all residences within 500 feet of the property line, notifying the neighbors of changes, and provide information and direction on how a neighbor would be able to lodge complaints. So I've addressed these on the last page. I'm going to go through all of these. So our original draft, I don't know what happened to this, and I don't know. But anyway, our original draft for the short-term rental bed and breakfast ordinance included an adjacent neighborhood notification page. That's what y'all have right now. That's what I handed to you, was the, thank you, notification page. I will tell y'all, we went ahead because completing a permit with short-term rentals is more cumbersome sometimes than it should be and could be. So we went ahead and thought, if they pass this, if they agree to put this back in the ordinance, we have provided on the second page a sample letter of what that could look like. So this would be the letter that the owner of the short-term rental would provide for their neighbor. Keep in mind that the idea behind all of this is that that person is on call 24/7. They don't call us first. We are only here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The sheriff's office can't handle it. So with the understanding, and we were very clear on this, when you rent it, when your neighbors know you've got a problem, if Mr. Gaines is the person you're supposed to call, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Gaines is getting a call. It operates just like a hotel motel. And if you have a problem in a hotel or motel, you're dialing the operator at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's the same premise. The ordinance also states that a late fee will be assessed if a permit is not renewed within 30 days. A fee was never determined or added. I think this was just an oversight on everyone's part. I would recommend $100 late fee if you have not completed your renewal within 30 days. We send out letters, we send everything, and if it's not been renewed, then if you decide to renew it, you're also going to pay for an additional $100 late fee. There's also a recommendation that we charge a processing fee of $100 for the initial application and $300 for annual renewals. Does that make sense? So currently, we have a processing fee of $50 and $250 technically for the short-term rental. What we are proposing is that because it is a little bit of a cumbersome, there's a tremendous amount of education and staff time that is necessary for that initial application. So we are recommending that we up that, and for just the initial application, it's $100 fee plus the $250. So that would be a total of $350. And then as they renew, it just goes back to the same $300. Another plus to that is we would hope that it would provide a second deterrent for people letting their permits lapse. Because the ordinance does state that after the permit has been expired, as we just discussed, for 30 days, well, there now would potentially be a late fee, but it must be renewed as a brand new permit. So they have to start that same process over and over. So we're hoping that would deter people. Any questions on that? Does that make sense?
I have one question on
Yes.
if the processing fee is $100, bringing that total to $350, why would the renewal application not be $250? Because that would be your $100 difference.
Well, because there's still, I should have a copy of the short-term rental application in here. Even on the renewal, there's still a lot of legwork on the renewal as well.
So then would the processing fee actually only be $50?
It would just be 50 on a renewal. So once you just say you have a short-term rental, you've paid 350, and now it's your second year, you were profitable, and you're like, yes, I'm going to keep doing this. You would still have to renew your permit, and it would be $300. And I get your point about the 250. I do think there needs to be a processing fee in there because it is quite a extensive permit. We get a lot of information from these short-term rental owners. And all of it is not in a brand new one. You need more information, but you need probably 3/4 of it even on the renewal. And no matter how, I mean, things that change, like for instance, your driver's license may have expired. And I'm trying to think, Catherine. Insurance, thank you. Proof that you own the house, all kinds of things. You have to prove that every year because that doesn't just stay stagnant. So they have to still provide the same documentation every year. And there is a lot. And sometimes people just don't read. And so, there is a lot of us going back and forth and them having to do it. So I think that both processing fees should stay in place. Does that answer your question?
I think I was just confused a little bit by if the processing fee is $100, should the initial application not be $100 less? But I think I understand what you're saying. You're putting a $50 processing fee on the renewal and $100 on the initial.
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly.
I guess it just doesn't say in here a $50 processing fee for the renewal, but you spelled it out.
Yes, you got it.
At what point did you say that, 30 days late, you're charged a late fee? At what point would you have to do a full, start over fresh with a new
The
application?
31st day or.
31st day?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's and
Pay
again,
the $100 late fee plus the new application fee?
and that's what we're hoping will be the deterrent. If we put that in there, yes, because in actuality, yes, now you're reapplying back. Just say it's your.
You're late.
We're using Commissioner Stowers as the same thing. He's just, or was it Chris we used? So you've just got your short-term rental. You've done it for a year. You paid your $350. And it just say you got it January 1st. Well, we're sending you out a letter December 1st to remind you that your renewal is due January 1st. and you don't renew it, and then suddenly you're calling us on January 31st and you're saying, I want to renew it. So then we can say, well, you can, but now you're going to have to pay as if it was a brand new, even though we know this is your second year, you're gonna have to pay the $350, and you're gonna also have to pay the late fee of $100. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? I know it gets a little, we deal with it all day, so we're very familiar with it. And it seems, again, it's a deterrent, but we've talked about, it's funny how so many people have come and said, we need to charge more for the initial application fee. And it's just like any of our, all of our licenses, we always charge a processing fee, no matter when it is. We're just saying for this first one, it is quite cumbersome. We also recommend to add language for the short-term rental bed and breakfast served by sewer stating number of bedrooms outlined in the sewer capacity certification letter, which is provided by Etowah Water and Sewer. We had to check into that, and they actually provide a letter for the people that have sewer. So it works very similar. They tell how many bedrooms it will support, just like the septic tank does. Well, the health department does the septic tanks, yes.
Environmental health.
And environmental health does the septic tanks, and Etowah does the other. We're also recommending, because this was one of the things they had talked about, currently our short-term rental bed and breakfast ordinance says that it's 2 people per bedroom plus 2. So as an example, if you have 4 bedrooms, that would be 8 people plus 2, maximum is 10 people. It says maximum during the daytime is ×2 of whatever that is. So you've got 10 people, but you can have 20 people on premise during the day. Because this has been one that has been quite a complaint in the past, we agree with what the long-term planning committee is saying, and that potentially instead of just making it the same, you might want to consider reducing it to 1.5. So that same situation, instead of being able to have 20 people during the daytime, they would have 15.
But you haven't had any complaints at all this year.
Not this year. We haven't.
I think the premise when we
Well,
were talking about that was like
it's
if
not
somebody had like a
permitted, but we
kid's
have had a
birthday
complaint.
party or something, you may ramp up during the day and then you'd ramp back down at night or something. I think that was the idea behind that.
I'm not finding, well, I'll tell you what we tend to find. Not necessarily kids' birthday parties, but small weddings. That's what people want to rent, a short-term rental and have a small wedding. And so that's what we find. And that's probably where it's been called to our attention the most. Even in some of the remote places, we had a place up on, where was it? Right across from the corn mat. What is that road that goes straight up the mountain? It's a dirt road. But anyway, we used to have complaints on that place like crazy because we kept telling, they said they weren't having weddings, but that was the complaint. And you can have a small, it's not a wedding venue, but if you have a wedding you're actually technically not supposed to. I'm not even gonna go down that bunny hole.
But how do you? The only way to enforce this, going back to your opening statement, is, ordinances are only good as they are enforced. So how do you enforce this? How do you advertise that? Are they supposed to on VRBO say you can have this number of people during the day and this number of people at night if they're under 5 acres or over 5 acres? How does that get communicated to the end renter, I guess?
It's all in the application. And we actually put it on the permit, how many people, but their advertising is by bedrooms. It is always by bedrooms.
Right.
But everything is spelled out very clearly on the application. And then we even reiterated, I've had them we put it on the permit and in the email to them, because we email a lot of
Then I guess if
permits.
a complaint happened, then you have teeth to it, essentially is the way that it gets.
We have a lot of teeth. That's why I'm saying to y'all over this ordinance, we already have a lot of teeth. And this is just really tightening it up. Because I will tell you, just having, like I was saying, going to code enforcement trainings, but just Google it. Start looking at other states, other counties, and the problems that they have with short-term rentals. I mean, I know, Angie, you can speak specifically to Forsyth County, but when you look at the challenges that people face, I mean, I will give you an example. I was just talking with someone in Savannah alone. They have 12 code enforcement assigned to short-term rental bed and breakfast only. I mean, it is massive, and they could just go on and on with the stories. So what we're trying to do is something I've found, if people know you're watching and know that you're serious about what you're doing, they tighten it up and rein it in. Have you found that to be the case? Have y'all found that to be the case with your children? Well, maybe not young ones, but so we talk to them, they know what is there, and then we're looking and we're like, I will tell you, 68 of our short-term rentals, we've had to send them notification that we see you're advertising incorrectly. Take it down. We're notifying Airbnb and VRBO. And if we see it again, so we give them, just like anything else, 2 warnings and you get a citation. And if that's how we just revoked one. People can get their short-term rentals revoked. So we're very clear with them about the parameters of our ordinance, and it has served us well.
And the property owner is the one, if they're not complying by all this, they can put it up on their website, sure, or on their advertising list, but if the people who are staying there are not abiding by the regulations, even if it's on their site, the property owner is actually the one who receives the warnings and the citations, correct?
Because they're responsible. It's just like, it's their business. They own that hotel motel. And yeah, it's very specific. So if any complaints go out, and that's the whole purpose, particularly with this letter that we're suggesting we put back in, when the neighbors know who to go to, they will go to them. And they'll be dialing them up. And nobody wants to be awakened at 2:00 in the morning more than once. So I'll tell you another thing we talk to people a lot about is their signage. Our ordinance requires it, but particularly on the lake, we talk to them about, you have got to have a signage for the noise ordinance, giving them the times that you are in violation and that it will be enforced. They also have notices up for a number of people, that kind of thing. Now, that doesn't mean everybody does exactly what they're supposed to do. But once they find out that it's just not, I will tell you, in the past, oftentimes these things fell by the wayside. There was no consistency, no staying on top of things. And so what is the human nature? You just kind of go, nobody's watching. I can do this.
Let me ask you this, in reference to the letter that you
Yes,
sent
sir.
the adjacent neighbors. So if it's on a private road
Right?
with, let's say, 10 houses, and the neighbors that live on that house take care of the road, they fund it themselves, and someone sells a house to someone, and then all of a sudden they want to become a short-term rental. So the other 9 neighbors are against short-term rental on that road because they're the ones that keep the road up. Do they have any recourse at all other than getting a letter?
Well, let me ask you, I have a question to your question, and I'm not being smart, and then Joe, I just have a question as well. But what if they sell it to someone that is not short-term rental? They're there 365 days a year.
Mhm.
They have a very large family, like my husband, like 500 people, it feels like. And they like to host things every weekend because they got this great place up here and they want to invite everybody up. What would you do? So there's that scenario on someone that lives there 365 days a year in a short-term rental. How would you handle either one of those on a private road?
So I don't think the private road really has any bearing on this because this is land use and ordinance, county ordinance. It's just like suggesting, well, it's a private road, so the noise ordinance doesn't apply, or the solid waste ordinance doesn't apply, or the STR ordinance doesn't apply. So I think the private road has nothing to do with it. We can still regulate it. In the scenario about just a family who has a party or an event, I don't think we can limit the number of people in a single family home that's not overnight. Now we have some criteria, I think, and we've got septic and all those things that could limit bedrooms and those things, but just the party people, is going to strictly be controlled by the noise ordinance. Now, if they're parking illegally, that could be a factor too.
But
But
who enforces that on a private road?
yeah,
Because
on a
we
private
don't-
road, I think, it would depend. That's the problem. Many times, maybe the private road has some kind of HOA.
The private road would be
requirements.
enforced by the sheriff's department if it was a hindrance to people being able to get by. But I mean, private, you own to the middle of the roadway. So technically there is no right of way. You're able to park on that roadway as long as it's in front of your house and it's not hindering ambulance or stuff
Not
like safety
blocking.
vehicles to be able
Yeah.
to get by.
So my recommendation would be an HOA. I mean, if you could, if that could be approved by all the people on that road. Just a thought. That's not my area of
And
expertise.
certainly an HOA, could prohibit short-term rental or prohibit rentals as an HOA. Now, again, you ask the question, how do they enforce it? You don't always know what's going on inside the homes. I mean, a lot of times you do. Nosy neighbors would figure things out like that, especially if it was on a small road. But I think that's outside the purview really of what we're talking about here. But if HOAs controlled it, then we wouldn't have to.
And they could control the road being repaired and how much people put into it. Oh, another recommendation that was made, which we agree with, is adding the specific language, all occupants, regardless of age, are counted as persons. So, if it's a 6-month-old infant, they're a person. Suggest language also be added to require the owner to designate a local agent within the county or adjacent county. Now, this is in addition, I told you, I shared my conversation with Judge Myers, and we can still cite people, but we are recommending for the purposes of a neighbor that's having a problem and needs to get in touch with the agent, that they're within driving distance to take care of it if necessary. So that is the conclusion of my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
No? Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
County manager report, Joy.
Your flash report for the month of August is in your packet today. Also, I wanted to make just one note of correction on item number 3. Earlier, I misspoke. I said splots 2. Obviously, I meant splots 7. But just for the record, I wanted to clarify that in case there's ever a problem. Also, I just want one community reminder. The Lake Lanier Association, in conjunction with several other organizations, is hosting a shore sweep, the annual shore sweep, which is this coming Saturday, the 21st. Occurring all over different locations on Lake Lanier, but War Hill Park here in Dawson County is one of those locations. It's a great event to come out and help clean up the lake and see some friends and enjoy some sunshine. I understand they're having steak dinners available, but I want to clarify that is tube steak. That would be a hot dog. But come on out and enjoy the day, and it's a fun time and good fellowship and a good cause. Encourage folks to do that this Saturday at 8 o'clock or whenever you can get there. Pardon me?
Already went by.
Also, Mr. Chairman, finally, I do have a need for an executive session tonight, later on for real estate purposes.
Okay. Questions for the county manager? County attorney report, Ms. Davis.
No report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, that ends our work session. We'll take about a 10-minute break and we'll be back for the voting session. Thank you for your attendance. All right, let's bring that. Let's go over here. What do they do? Do they meet all